Hi, guys. Welcome to Glam Chats. So excited to have you guys joining in. For those of you who don't know, you can ask questions in the chat box if you're joining me live, and I will answer them either as I go or at the end, depending on where they fit. But I'm really excited about today's topic. We are going to be talking about elevating your hourly earnings and balancing your time and pricing for max return. This one's a really, really fun one to me because I love to see increases in my income without increasing my time put in. And this is why I left a commission salon. For those of you who don't know me, the reason I opened Bex& Co., which we have 7 locations now, is because I was working in commission salons. I was their top earner. They were not willing to increase my commission. So the only way I could make more money was to work more hours. So I started working 5 days, 6 days in a row, and I was exhausted. I was burnt out. And I was making more money, but this just really wasn't the way to do it. So I opened Bex& Co. so that I could set my own prices, set my own timing, choose the clients I wanted to take, choose the services that were best for me, and really maximize my earnings without spending more time behind the chair. And I really wanted to have more time for my life outside of the salon so it didn't just overtake everything, which is why we get so burnt out. We get carpal tunnel, our bodies hurt. It's because we're trying to maximize our earnings by maximizing our time behind the chair. So I've got lots of solutions for you. Basically, I'm going to go through my story, the different things I've tried, how I work. There's no wrong way to work, guys. I know that people say all the time, like you shouldn't double book, or you should spend more time, or you should spend less time, or you're not efficient enough. But really, it's up to you and what makes you happiest. So whether you're spending all of your time with one client and only doing one client a day, or you're doing 12 clients a day and you're double booking, I'm going to show you how to make more money either way. So my story, I watched a lot of stylists growing up. I was I graduated school in 2002, which really ages me, but I back then we worked hard. We double booked our clients. We worked fast. The goal was to do as many clients in a day as you can, and we were doing them at really low prices. And also keep in mind the styles we were doing were a lot simpler back then. The things they were asking for. I know you guys have seen the TikToks about hair in 2002 versus hair today, and it's so true. A lot of my highlights were really chunky, big chunks where I could put a bunch of hair in a foil, and I wasn't toning them. So it was just a different way of working. It was a different way of doing hair. And of course, just like everything else, we've evolved and things require more time. But when I worked at Frederick Fekkai as an apprentice, our lead creative director of cutting booked 15-minute haircuts. He booked 4 haircuts an hour. He did upwards of 40 cuts a day because he worked really long days. He had 3 assistants. They blow dried and they shampooed for him. And he would be with that client for sometimes 5 or 10 minutes. And he did these really simple cuts. He got him out of the chair. And a lot of times he didn't even say bye. It was like once you moved on to the assistant, you were done. Now, with that being said, he charged $250 per haircut. So he was pulling $1,000 an hour minus the expenses it cost for him to work. So that really worked for him, and clients were satisfied with that. I think now that we've evolved, clients aren't as satisfied with that type of work. Same for me. When I first auditioned to work at the big salon I worked at in Austin, it was a timed audition. So they weren't just measuring my skill, they were measuring how quickly I was able to do everything and whether I was double booking. And what's so funny about that is they chose my clients. So they sent me in color corrections and they're like, this is your full highlight. And they were timing me on whether I could get it done quickly. And now I realize that it's just so much more complicated than that. Moving on to booking with my assistant, I worked 10-hour days. Sometimes I would do 15 clients. We double booked. We got people in and out. I would do 45-minute full highlights, even if they wanted a full transformation. Sometimes it was quality work. Sometimes it wasn't. That's just the truth of it. But I was on such a time crunch. That was my only option. That is one way to work. I'm not saying it's wrong. I will say I was very burnt out. I was very tired, and I was not working at I was working at optimum capacity. So I was very efficient and I was making a ton of money, but I can't say that my work was as quality as it could have been. That's why I always say I was a very average stylist with a good business sense. I could have been doing better work. I am very talented, but I didn't always allow myself the maximum amount of time I needed to do the work. But my pricing was set accordingly. My prices were probably lower than they should have been because I wasn't spending as much time with each client. It's something to take into account. Now, I only work with one client at a time. I only do VIP services. I do about 1 day a month in the salon, and my average earnings are around 300 to 400 per hour because of the way I price my services. So there's definitely ways that work better than others. But again, this is all personal preference. So once you've decided how you want to work, whether you double book, whether you see a lot of clients, whether you see fewer clients and offer uh, a greater experience at a higher price, is up to you. But what I want to do is how to show you how to be efficient and price accordingly so that you can make max amount. So let's dive right in. So I want to talk about hourly pricing, and this is a really controversial subject. Maybe controversial isn't the word, but it's a subject that we're really divided on in the industry. I believe in hourly pricing. I don't believe in it as telling the client, I cost $150 an hour. I don't accept tips, and that's what you pay no matter what you ask for. That's not how I price. The client does not know my hourly. My services all have a price, but I know my hourly and I can almost guarantee I'm going to make it because it's the way I price my services. I decide on how technically difficult they are. I decide on how long they're going to take me and how much it's going to cost me to do the service. Once I've decided on that, I can give a client an all inclusive price. They can tip if they want to. They don't have to. I make a lot of money off tips. So it's really hard for me to say, don't tip me, because that's definitely a fun bonus I like. I know the industry is getting away from that. So that is totally up to you and your clientele. My clients, a lot of them are older. They've always tipped. So the idea of not tipping me is a little bit uncomfortable to them. So it's actually kind of it's kind of where I'm trying to take discomfort out. It actually sometimes makes them more uncomfortable not to tip. So you want to kind of take that into account. But to figure out your hourly pricing, I want you to go back 30 days in your book. And it's really important that you guys know your numbers. You should always know your numbers. Like if I were to say, how much did you make last month? I want you to be able to tell me, how many hours did you work? I want you to be able to tell me. If I say, how much did you make per hour? You should know that. And you should know that every single month. So every month, you're going to go back 30 days. You're going to look at how much you made in total, your total gross revenue. That means everything you took in without thinking about your expenses. I want you to take that number. I want you to take the number of hours you work, look at your book, really calculate how long you were there for the day and find out how many hours you worked that day. And I want you to look at your expenses. And if you're not calculating your expenses every month you have to start doing this, guys. This is so important. You guys are losing my money by not knowing this. So let's do an example. My formula is I take the total amount I made. So let's say I made $12,000 that month. I'm going to take my expenses. Let's say my expenses were $1,800 that month. I subtract 1,800 from 12,000, and then I'm going to divide that number by the number of hours worked. So we're going to use the example of 120 hours. So I've taken my gross revenue, the amount that I brought in, I've subtracted expenses, which is my net revenue, and now I'm going to divide it by the number of hours I worked. So that comes out to $85 an hour. So let's say my goal is to make closer to $150 an hour, and I almost need to double that number. I'm going to tell you how to do that, and I'm going to tell you how to do it like in the next 30 days. So um, here's the 3 factors that we need to consider when we're trying to increase our hourly rate. 1, we can increase our prices. Increasing our prices will always increase our hourly rate. 2, we increase our efficiency. So we work a little bit faster behind the chair. We cut out tasks that we don't need to be doing or that we're doing inefficiently. And we spend less time with each client without them feeling that they're getting less time. And then number 3 is you lower your overhead. All of these things are going to contribute to getting an increased hourly rate. So let's talk about these things one at a time. Increase your prices. So I know this is kind of a scary subject, but really you should be increasing your prices every single year. If you're doing a quarterly increase, they should go up 5%. If you're doing twice a year increase, they should go up 10%. And if you're doing a yearly increase, that should be a 15% per year. I personally do 2 times a year. I do right before the holidays when clients are already spending a lot of money, and then I do during the summer. I usually go up about 10%. So if I'm charging regularly 200 for a service, it's going to go up to 220, period. Um, Clients are paying more for their groceries. They're paying more for cars. They're paying more for their homes. They're expecting prices to increase. So this is not a scary thing. If your prices have been the same for several years with the rate of inflation, you really have to increase in order to make money. So just make this your new thing. Choose whether it's quarterly, yearly, twice a year, set the date, and always increase the price, and clients will come to expect it. Like I said, I do not break down pricing for clients. You're never going to hear me say, okay, your highlight was $250, your toner was $40, your root tap was an additional $65, and I did a $15 curl add-on. It gives the client too much control, because what they're going to do is they're going to say, well, I can't really afford that, so I don't want the toner and I want to leave wet. And they're going to say, but I want the same result. So I don't want the toner, but I still want it to be this color. And I want to leave wet, but I still want you to dry it and curl it so that I can make sure the color's right. So what they tend to do is they want the same service, but they want it at a cheaper price. Don't give them the option to pick and choose what parts of the service they want. I say this is an all-inclusive price. You want this picture with this cut and this color, it's going to cost you $450 to go from your hair now to this picture right here. That's it. And if they start asking about toners, I say, I really don't know for sure what we're going to need, because it's a kind of complicated process to get you from where you are now to where you want to be. And I don't want to nickel and dime you and have to add all these upcharges. So I'd rather just give you an all-inclusive price. You know exactly what to expect. You know how much you're going to pay, and you're going to have this result. Does that sound comfortable to you? And they're always going to say, yeah, great. So it's going to be $450. And I'm like, yep, $450. And you're going to walk out with hair you love. And if you don't, we're going to keep working on it until we get you there. That's how I handle that. I also think that by doing all-inclusive pricing, you really need to reevaluate your pricing every time you see a client. So a client needs to you need to get them to expect to know that their price is not going to be the same every time they come in. So even if they want a full highlight every time they come in and they want the same results they had the last time, they might not have used good products, and they might have a lot of chlorine and yellow in their hair. They might have gone a month longer than usual and they have more grow out. So in order to really price accordingly, you need to do a few-minute consultation where we say, okay, these are the results you want. I know it's the same as last time. Here's why the pricing is a little bit different, and here's your price today. Today your price is $460, and it might go down. I know you want the same thing. It looks like we don't need a cut today, so your price is actually going to be $420 today, or whatever that looks like to you. But price accordingly. Have your client expect to come in not knowing the price, and you're going to do a consultation, and you're going to give them the price every single time they come in the salon. That should be an expectation. I also want you to take into consideration if they're wanting a more specialized cut. Lots of factors go into your pricing. So a haircut is not always the same price every time. If they want half an inch off, I know we talk about all the time, like a trim is a cut. It is. But if they want a pixie versus half an inch off, that's going to be a big difference on your time. So instead of having a set cut price, I really would think about having an all-inclusive pricing with their color that you decide on the cut based on the amount of time you're going to spend on the total amount of service. So this is how you increase your prices. Again, just to go over that again, you're going to have a price increase every year, whether it's quarterly, 2 times a year, or yearly. That's going to get your price point up. You're going to do all-inclusive services where you don't break down service price. So Clients can't negotiate a price. It's always what it costs. There's no negotiation. And then 3, you're going to price differently for specialized services. So if something is a more challenging service, and you know it's going to take you a little bit more time or more product, you're going to up that price when you do that consultation. And you're always going to have that consultation and price that service for your client every single time they come in. So this is step number 1 to getting your hourly higher. Okay, step number 2 is increasing your efficiency. This one's really important. I'm not saying to work faster if it's not comfortable for you. If you are working as fast as you can to be in your comfort level, that's fine. But there's a few things you can do to cut as much as 45 minutes off of a service. 1, practice, practice, practice. Balayage, foiling, get to where it's muscle memory, get to where your hands do it quickly, get to where you're doing very repetitive movements so that you can do them very comfortably, very cleanly. You do not necessarily need to change a foil pattern every time you foil. It's totally okay if you're doing something unique and you need to change it, but there's no need to try to come up with more challenging foil patterns to seem like you're doing a better job. The goal is to get the prettiest hair possible. And by doing repetitive actions, you're going to get cleaner lines, you're going to get better at it, and you're going to just do better hair. So keep it simple. 2, reduce the time that you're spending mixing color. I know sometimes we need a break, and that's a little bit different if you need to eat or go to the bathroom. But if you're really spending a lot of time mixing your color, you're slow moving, you kind of don't have your stuff organized, so you're having to dig for the color, the tubes all crinkled up. Find ways to be more efficient. Organize your color space so that you can grab what you need super easily. Have your color tubes rolled up so that you can squeeze out the color super easily. Really think about these things because they really do add a lot of time to the service. Next, if you're spending a lot of time pre-booking appointments or checking clients out, find ways to streamline this. And maybe it's working with an assistant. Maybe it's just already having the client prepped in the chair for what they're going to pay so that when you walk up there, you're literally just scanning their card. Maybe you're not walking to the desk. Maybe you've got everything set up at your station, but shaving off time. If you do all of these things, you can shave off almost 45 minutes off an appointment. And if you're pricing hourly, 45 minutes could be $100 more. That's a big deal. So we really want to take these things into consideration. Another way to be more efficient is to work full time with an assistant. This would mean that you need your assistant to shampoo, tone, blow dry. They need to check out your clients, book your appointments. You really have to make sure they're doing your work, and they need to clean, sweeping, mixing color, cleaning your bowls. This is all going to save you a ton of time, but you have to make sure you're busy enough and the use of the assistant balances out. So if you're paying your assistant a ton and they're not doing a lot, then you're actually going to lower your hourly, and that is not the goal. So you really need to evaluate. Again, we talked about hiring an assistant last time. Go back and watch that if you haven't. It was my Glam chat 2 weeks ago. If you can really benefit from an assistant and add more clients by adding an assistant, absolutely do it. If you're not there yet, increase your efficiency first and then bring in an assistant. The third thing is to lower your overhead. This is pretty obvious, but sometimes you don't realize how much you're spending. 1, don't waste your color. Even if you have to mix again, I know that goes against efficiency, but don't really pump out a ton of bleach in there thinking, oh, I don't want to have to come back here. If you're dumping a ton of color down the sink, that is money down the sink. So you really need to think about that. All these fun things come out, and I know it makes our job fun, like the cute foils or the new foiling combs or the new curling iron or blow dryers, but really evaluate if it's going to increase your client experience or make your work better. If it's not, like if having smiley faces on your foils, and don't get triggered, I love them too, I buy them too, but if you're spending an extra $5 per client to have colorful foils, it just might not be worth it, and it might be affecting your bottom line. So think about those things before you buy them, and shop around for good prices. Like, just because you've got a distributor you like doesn't mean that there's not a distributor that offers your color for less. And you can kind of, if you love your distributor, be like, look, I found this for cheaper here. Is there any way you can work with me to get my prices a little bit better? This goes for your booking software, the color you use, the tools and supplies you use. Some things you can order off Amazon. Some of the girls use foils from like Sam's Club. There's lots of ways to reduce your overhead. So definitely be thinking about that. So this kind of brings me to talking about your new calculations. So let's say you've done these things that we have talked about and you want to do your new calculations. So if you'll remember, our formula is the total amount we made minus our overhead or expenses divided by the hours we worked. So let's say we raised our prices a little bit and we started doing more specialized services. We're pricing the services more accurately. So this time, instead of making 12,000, we made 16,000 because we did all these things that we talked about. Two, let's say we lowered our overhead. Last time we said our overhead was 1,800. Let's say now it's 1,300. You were able to shave $500 off your overhead by being more efficient with your color, not spending on things that you don't necessarily need. And then lastly, let's say this time you worked 100 hours instead of 120 because you were so much more efficient and you found ways to shave time off some of your services. So if we were to divide or subtract 16 or subtract 1,300, which is our expenses, from 16,000, which is how much we made, and divide that by 100 hours, which is how much we worked, we're now at $147 an hour. So we went from talking about making $85 an hour to $147 an hour and working 20 hours less. That's huge, huge. So this is where it's so important to really take these factors into account because it doesn't seem like it would move the needle much, but it does. And the next time we do this, we're looking at our $16,000 number and our overhead. We want to do it again. So next time it could be 20,000 and you still only have 1,300 of overhead and you work more hours. Think of how easily we can increase our income if we continually do this. So again, just to reiterate what we talked about, I want you guys to think about the three things that you take into account whenever you are trying to increase your hourly. That is raising your prices, increasing your efficiency, and lowering your overhead. Those are the three things you need to do. The next thing I want to talk about or reiterate is knowing your numbers. The only way you're going to be able to regularly know that you're generating the right amount per hour and regularly increasing your hourly is every month. I want you to know exactly how much you brought in to the dollar. And you can do this on your Square or however you're collecting money. How much is the total amount I brought in this month? How much was my overhead? How much did I spend out of my business bank account, every single penny, and subtract that? And then I want you to know exactly how many hours you worked that month. And this is a good way to gauge how many hours you like to work. Like if the month felt good and you had a lot of personal time, that means that's the right amount of hours. If you're feeling burnt out and you're exhausted and you couldn't go anywhere because you were so tired after work, we might be putting in a little bit too much time. So know those hours. These are numbers we need to know every 30 days. We need to calculate them at the end of the month and really be aware of these things. So I'm really excited to hear how much you guys increase your numbers. That's something that if you're on the Facebook page, we do have a Facebook page, Glam Chats. It's a group. Definitely go there. Let's chat about this. Maybe we could add some comments to this video about this is how much I'm making per hour. You know, here's how I found this number and here's what I want to make and your plans to increase that. When you write things down, you're more likely to do it. So I want you guys to get on there. Let's all talk about it. I think it's important to network and have community with other independent stylists. But let's all get together and really think about that. I think it's really exciting to see how much more we can make. And lastly, there's no right or wrong way. I said this in the beginning. If you want to do a lot of clients and make your money that way, wonderful. If you want to do fewer clients, maybe just 2 or 3 a day, and you feel more comfortable working like that, great. Just price accordingly. Be efficient on the things like sweeping hair, mixing color, the things that really have no impact on the results of the client's hair. And yeah, oh, I've got some questions. Okay, guys. Hold on. So you guys want to know how to tell clients you're increasing your prices. Okay. This one, I don't announce price increases. Some of you go on Instagram and say, I'm increasing by this much, which is great. Totally fine to do that. I would just make sure and not make it negative. I would never say, like, I don't make enough money. I don't make a living wage. Prices on everything have gone up. You know, unfortunately, I have to do this. I stick to more of like, hey guys, I am so in demand right now. It's wonderful. Humble brag, I've got so many wonderful clients, and I really have to raise my prices just to take control of my books. Things are a little bit more expensive, which is fine, but I'm going to price my services accordingly. And so you should expect an increase on your service price of $15. Or if you're concerned about my price raise, please reach out to me and I can tell you exactly how much your service is going to cost so that you'll know what to expect when you come in. And if I'm out of your budget, I totally understand. And while I love you and want to continue to see you, I can absolutely refer you to a stylist that might fit your budget a little bit better. That's the conversation. Especially since you're switching to all-inclusive pricing and you're giving the client a new price every time they come. They might not even notice the price increase, or they notice it, but they understand it a little bit better. That's why it's so important to have that consultation and announcing your prices every single time they come in. So keep that in mind. Hold on. More questions. Let's see. Okay, this one's about efficiency. I already feel like I'm working as fast as I can with the client. How do I become more efficient? Okay, so if you're foiling or balayaging as fast as you feel comfortable, don't try to be faster about that. What we're looking at is things like sweeping hair, washing bowls, doing towels, mixing color in the back, the process of checking a client out. Those are the things that we can spend less time doing, maybe even at the shampoo bowl, and not affect the end result. So those are the things you want to focus on. The second thing is really trying to practice and become repetitive with what you're doing, keeping it simple. You're going to get prettier results this way. And this is not always the case. Sometimes you have to do something different because the client wants something different. But if you're doing something and you know that you've got a beautiful foil pattern for a full highlight and it works every time on everybody, it's just increasing the amount of the hair in the foil or decreasing it. Do that so that you can move faster. Also, maybe talk a little bit less to the client. We definitely want to engage with them if they want to engage, but you don't want to talk so much that you're slowing yourself down. So definitely keep that in mind when you're really thinking about efficiency. Um, Next, let's see. Any more questions? Okay, here's one about pricing. So they want to know about not necessarily raising your pricing, but pricing your service. How do you know how much to charge when you're doing an all-inclusive service? That's a really great question. Again, it's about how specialized the service is. So you want to take that into account. The second thing you want to really have a good grasp on is how much product you're going to use. If you know that the client has really extra thick, long hair, you want to take that into account. And then you also want to really think about how much time do I genuinely think this is going to take me? So, how much product are you going to use? How much time is it going to take you? And how specialized is the service? Are they asking for like really complicated fashion tones? Are they asking for a very specialized haircut? This is where you take it into account. And I might, while I say you don't break down the prices for the client, I'll break them down for myself. So in the back, I know that I use 2 tubes of color and a scoop of bleach. And these are just examples, probably not accurate, but I know it's going to take me about 3.5 hours. I know that I'm going to need to do a toner, a root tap, a haircut, and that she's going to want really specialized curls. And then after I curl, she's going to ask me to go back through and fix a few things. And then she's going to want me to take off an extra inch because she's a client that just requires more time. I am going to take all that into account when I come into my pricing. So I might have a set highlight cost, a set root tap cost, a set toner cost, a set extra bowl cost. I'm just not going to tell the client that. I'm going to add it up in the back, figure out the all-inclusive price, and then I'm going to tell the client the all-inclusive price. And when they say, well, why is it that much? I'm not going to say, well, we're going to do this, the extra 2 bowls of color because you have the care in the toe. I'm going to say, well, I calculated how much time I think it's going to take with how much product I'm going to use and how specialized your service is. And while I don't have the exact answer because I don't know what it's going to take, I just know this is the price it's going to take us to get you to where you want to be. That way you've kind of given them some responsibility in the price, that you're not just overpricing. You're explaining that they've asked for something challenging. They have a lot of hair. And so this is what it's going to take to get them there. So they have a little bit of responsibility in choosing blonde when they have brown hair. I also will offer, if they're really just, I can't afford that, I'll say, okay, well, one thing we could do, I know you've shown me this picture of really blonde hair, but what do you think about a little bit more lived in look that has a little bit less blonde? Let me show you some pictures. And if they agree to that, we make the service less challenging, use less product, and use less time to give them what they can budget. Um, the second thing we can do if they're just really worried about pricing is we can refer another stylist, because sometimes these are the clients that aren't a good fit anyway. This is not great if you've already got them in your chair. This is why consultation is so important. But we want to make sure that they're the right client for us and can pay our prices. So super important. And sometimes just the process of explaining that it's very specialized and that I do really beautiful work. So you're going to get to go a little bit longer in between services because this is going to grow out so nicely. You can kind of break it down in, usually you would need to come every 2 months, but now you're only coming 4. So technically this is how much it's costing per month. You're just paying more today. Those are all great ways to explain it. Anybody have anything else? Any more questions? All right. I think that wraps it up, guys. I'm so excited to talk about these things every week. If you guys have suggestions on topics you would like for me to talk about, um, I really focus on independent stylists, growing your money, that sort of thing. Oh, I've got one. If you've already calculated how much you spend on color scoops, et cetera, and they need more, are we charging by weight, bowl, or personal preference? This is personal preference. This is why it's so important to kind of have an idea of how much you're going to be using on that client and get used to knowing how much product costs. So if I quote 450, I'm sticking to 450. I'm not going to be like, listen, I used an extra bowl of color, and so now it's going to cost more. If I told them 450 to get to the end result and I miscalculated how much it's going to use, I'm going to know for next time to price their service higher. But this time I'm going to go ahead and charge that. But yeah, if you're calculating in the back before you quoted price, I would just have a really good idea of how much product you're going to be using. And this is one of the, well, we don't want to waste product. And we don't want to undercharge for product because our product doesn't cost us that much money. This is one that if you do wind up using one extra tube of color, it's $10 or so. If you're upwards of 450 and 500 for the service, that's not worth making a client feel uncomfortable by raising the price halfway through. Just let it go, and know for next time. It's all a learning experience. So yeah, it's mostly personal preference. I've done so much. I've worked with my clients so much that I can basically look for their hair and look at their hair and say like, okay, it's probably going to take me 2 tubes of color, 2 scoops of bleach or so. I'm going to just charge about $40 for that. $50 is what I'm going to charge for that on top of the service price. But yeah, mostly just personal preference. There's no right or wrong way. You just don't want to be undercharging for your color so much so that you're losing money. That's all. And you don't want to be overusing color. Keep it simple. I always say this, but like if I know this is a rare example, but if it doesn't need a toner, it doesn't need a toner. Don't put it on there just because you think you should have a toner. I know that that's an unpopular opinion. Um, but you can get the same effect with like some really pretty glosses and conditioners or treatments. If you're just trying to still the cuticle, you can do that with treatments. You don't necessarily have to put a color toner on there if the result is just a beautiful color. And keep that in mind. I mean, don't do extra work where it's not necessary. If you're toning hair that doesn't need to be toned, you're wasting 30 minutes of your time and probably $15 in color. So know when to say, you know what? This is great. I can stop here. I don't have to add more. Same with cutting. Like if you're someone who goes in when it's dry and really does a lot of detail work, great. But if you're just doing it more for show or for the client's benefit to make them think you're doing more, kind of figure out where you can back off of that. Just so you're a little bit more efficient for sure. All right. Anything else? We're good. Again, guys, I'm so excited you joined in. Make sure and give me topics you love. You can go do that on the Facebook page. You can do it on Instagram at also known as Bex. Our Facebook page is Glam Chats. You can find it there. I'm Rebecca Irvine. You can always search my name. My YouTube channel, there's Glam Chats on YouTube. There's so many ways to find us. We will have a podcast coming out soon, so watch for that. Again, Glam Chats. And then, of course, I have my courses. So if you like what you're hearing here and you're thinking about going independent, my courses give you lots of ways to do that. It's like what we're doing here, but times 100 with templates and expert interviews. So definitely bexirvine.com. It has everything that I offer. It's got my blog and everything. So go check it out. And again, thanks for joining in. Thanks for trusting me, you guys. I've done this for a long time. And if there's ever any tips or anything that I missed, definitely hop on and let other stylists know what's worked for you. We're a community and it's so important that we all talk about this stuff. All right, y'all. Have a great day. Nice chatting with you.